Thomas Kempis once said, "All men desire peace, but very few desire those things that make for peace." I woke up one morning thinking about a quote that I'd seen on the internet. A man was suggesting that we should do away with all defense spending and use that money instead to educate the people on the planet. This got me thinking, well, what about Iraq? What about Afghanistan and all these other hot spots where people hate us? Don't we need to defend ourselves from these people, those people who wish us harm? Don't we need to protect our interests over there? As I thought about this, my mind got to thinking about Seneca and a book I was reading at the time. He'd written a piece called Clemency, and in that piece he talked about how an emperor should act, how his cruelty to his enemies would only make more enemies. Seneca said that the will to harsh measures must therefore subside before harsh measures do. Otherwise a king's sternness will multiply enemies by destroying them, just as the lopped branches of trees shoot out many twigs and many species of vegetation grow thicker when they're cut back. So, our enemies hate us, and as a result, we're now in the business of killing them in hopes that at some point, somehow, we will have killed them enough that they then love us, I guess. Now, we've been in that business for more than 15 years now, and after all this time I was wondering if possibly we might try a different tack. So, really, what if we decided to give that guy's idea a try? What would happen? Currently, our message that we send to the world comes a lot of times by way of predator drones, hellfire missiles, artillery shells, mortar rounds, and bullets. Instead, what if we send help in the form of food, medicine, and other supplies into these areas? What if we send these items into all the areas, into all the factions equally? We play no favorites. What if we did that? What if we keep this help flowing regardless of the actions of ISIS or Al-Qaeda or any of the other bad actors out there? What if our only aim was to help these people? Now, we could use the military infrastructure and the forces that we've already got built up in the area to distribute these supplies. If they were attacked, these troops would obviously defend themselves, and the defense, though would be only as vigorous as the required and no more. We would not be there to mete out retribution anymore. We're not hunting for bad actors. We don't have any top 10 list. We're going to track the number of violent incidents that happen and see if they go down and how their frequency and their nature changes area by area. So we'd be able to measurably know whether or not we were being successful or not. We can actually tell. We can't tell how many more people love us because of the times that we hit them with a drone. Anyway, so once that monitoring indicates that a zone has become sufficiently pacified, we could then start sending in teachers or engineers, doctors, clerics, technicians, whatever kind of people that the area needs at the time. These people would be our new soldiers. They'd have adequate security contingent, no more. And they'd be well trained to be able to deal with the danger and protect themselves, but they'll also be aware of the foundational tenet of our approach. We'll defend our people as much as possible. However, if despite our best efforts they're wounded or killed, there will be no retribution forthcoming because of it. They're there to help those who might wish to do them harm, and the nonviolent resistance to our enemies is the key to our message getting through. The goal of all this is to cause the violent elements to lose backing from within. It's to take the oxygen out of the room for them. Think about it. What parent who sees their kid fed and cared for by their enemy won't change their attitude toward that enemy, if only just a little? Action like this isn't propaganda to change their hearts and minds. It isn't just talk. It's beneficial action, and as the old saying goes, actions speak louder than words. So, you might ask, well, what happens if the enemy interdicts all of our benevolence and taints or subverts our message? What if they take credit for the food and medicine? Well, I'm sure in some of the areas, some of the time, that will happen. But the thing I know is that they can't do that in all the areas all the time. Defeating terrorism by way of nonviolence is a long-term proposition. There's no end date on our efforts. All this assumes a very high level of commitment from us. We can't do it like Theodore Roszak said, where people try nonviolence for a week And then when it doesn't work, they go back to violence, which hasn't worked for centuries. As we've said, actions speak louder than words. We'll let our actions speak for us, and our message will be that we care for these people. We want their lives to be better. Word of what people have seen is stronger than word of what they have heard. This word will spread, people will talk, and the messengers that they hear the message from will be their kinsmen, people they already trust. Areas more loosely held by the enemy will fall more quickly, and these will receive their boots on the ground aid contingent sooner. Word will spread from area to area, and at first people will be skeptical because we have a ton of historical inertia that we need to overcome. And in the beginning, word of our actions may be regarded as tall tales or just outright lies. Acceptance, though, will come when there are enough tall tales told from enough different sources that these tall tales then must be true. So, what happens if a pacified zone starts to slip? What happens if the enemy attempts to reassert control in an area where we've already got boots on the ground? Well, if it's violent and concerted, we may have to withdraw our contingent for the time being, if that's possible. But regardless, the supplies would keep coming. Well, what if they kill locals who've been friendly to us? And I think it's to be honest, we just have to acknowledge the fact that given the nature of our enemy, this is likely to happen. It's probable that some of our people will die with them. And we will make it clear from the first encounter that we're there to help them, but we're not their protector. They need to defend themselves. So, what does this get us? Well, we make a convincing case to the people that we're trying to help that we're there for them. People will see us standing with them. They may see us dying with them. We'll assist them in real, practical ways that matter to them. Over time, the enemy's arguments against us should seem more and more specious in light of our actions and in light of our tangible results. As the enemy loses credibility, they'll lose backing. Conversely, we will gain credibility, influence will spread, and the country will hopefully pacify. So, aren't we just making a bunch of dependents? No. Our list of supplies isn't static. We send what the people need, and that's going to change over time. As the situation stabilizes and improves, we might start out with initial drops of food and clean water and medicine, but later we might be sending them classrooms and computers. It's just whatever they need at the time. Our help won't only consist of supplies and foreign experts either. A large piece of our plan will be in the form of financial aid. This support will not go to the governments, but straight to the people. Small business owners will receive funds with which they can then rebuild their businesses. If roads or other infrastructure needs work, we will help to restore it, but local businessmen and workers will be the key participants in that work. So increased demand for workers will in turn also improve even more people's lives. That's trickle-down in economics. Besides rebuilding their country, the people will also be responsible for their defense. Defense will also always be their responsibility. We're not their defenders. And because they're doing the work of rebuilding their country and they're also defending themselves and what they rebuilt, the people will find that they have pride in themselves and they'll build an enhanced ability to work across ethnic or tribal lines. All right, speaking of that, what if ethnic or racial or tribal quarrels rise in the vacuum left by the withdrawal of our enemy? In all cases, we're going to make it clear that we're on everybody's side collectively. We have no part in any internecine struggles like that. We can help them peacefully work out their differences, but if they go to blows, we'll withdraw our teams from both sides. Once the situation is settled down, we'll reinsert the resources needed and start from there. This plan will never work. Why? Because we've never tried it. States have dealt with each other in the same way for millennia, so you got to ask yourself, how's that working out for everybody? If we're going to get a different result, we are going to have to try a different approach. We're going to have to think differently. It's like Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So yes, this is a radical approach. And the fact is, we're probably never going to try it because people will see it as weakness. Myself, I couldn't disagree with them more. I see this as the strongest possible stance. We believe in our worldview so much that we're willing to put ourselves and our people in jeopardy for others. Not to kill them or to convert them to our way of thinking, but to allow them to think freely and make their own choices. To educate them, not to brainwash them. To enable them to chart their own path by lights of their own choosing. Not to be victims of those who would use their ignorance for their own purposes. Again, I go back to Seneca, who said, "Cruel punishment brings a king no glory, for everyone knows he can inflict it. But he wins very great glory if he restricts his own power, if he saves many from the wrath of others and sacrifices none to his own wrath." So what's in it for us? Well, to this point we've held the tactical high ground. We've held it with drones, satellites, and attack helicopters. Now, by our actions, we'll occupy the moral high ground. Our standing in the world will improve, not because we have the best hamburgers or the fanciest gizmos, but because we spend our efforts on improving the state of our fellow man. We're spending our treasure for another's betterment, and that measured in their eyes, not our own. We're not freeing them, we're just giving them the space to free themselves. I believe our people will be happier and prouder of what we're doing overseas. Doing unto others as they would have you do unto them is difficult to turn into something bad. Doing unto others before they can do unto you erodes the morale and the morality of our society. We'll all be better for changing tactics like this. Our treasure will be going towards helping others and not killing them. It may come to pass that we're safer as a result of making ourselves vulnerable. Seneca certainly thinks so. He said, "It's a mistake to think that the king is safe when nothing is safe from the king. One bargains for security with security." Right now we're in a Mexican standoff, and there is no way out of it unless one of us makes a move. Our enemies are not going to take the first step. The status quo as it is favors them. We have to change the status quo to turn the tide. Changing our methods as described here seems to me to be the best alternative. History's proven that nonviolence is a powerful tactic for those committed to the idea. It's worked many times before, and it can work again. Thank you very much.